Hi everyone. Tonight we'll drift through the long, winding tale of Great Britain, how a cold, empty land slowly became the center of empires, wars, revolutions, and culture. Close your eyes, breathe slowly, and let your mind wander back, far back, before kings and queens, before castles and wars, before there was even a country at all. About 800,000 years ago, the land we now call Britain was not yet an island. It was connected to Europe by a vast plain called Doggerland. Back then, early humans wandered its forests and coasts, hunting mammoths and gathering berries. They came and went, driven by long cycles of climate change. Sometimes the land was warm and green, other times buried under miles of glacial ice. These early people left behind only tools and bones, silent hints of a forgotten life. The island was shaped again and again by ice and water. Around 6200 BC, a great wave, a tsunami caused by a landslide off the coast of Norway, swept across the lowlands, drowning Doggerland and cutting Britain off from Europe forever. Now an island, the land slowly filled with new settlers. These were the Mesolithic hunter-gatherers, and later, the Neolithic farmers. They brought with them stone tools, animal herding, and early agriculture. Around 3000 BC, something remarkable happened. Across the plains of Wiltshire, huge stones were dragged and lifted upright. This became Stonehenge, a prehistoric monument whose full meaning still escapes us. It suggests complex societies, shared beliefs, and a growing sense of identity. These early Britons had no writing, but they left a landscape filled with tombs, henges, and sacred mounds. Around 800 BC, a new people arrived, the Celts. Originating from Central Europe, the Celtic tribes brought metalworking, language, and new forms of art. They built hill forts and lived in tight-knit clans. Their religion was guided by druids, mysterious priests who held the secrets of ritual, law, and nature. The Celts never formed a single nation. Britain at this time was a patchwork of tribes, each with its own leaders, customs, and rivalries. Then came the shadow of empire. In 55 BC, Julius Caesar crossed the English Channel. Though his first invasion was brief and largely symbolic, it marked the beginning of something much larger. Rome had set its sights on Britannia. But it would not be until nearly a century later, in 43 CE, that Emperor Claudius launched a full-scale invasion. Roman legions swept across the island, building roads, forts, and cities. They met fierce resistance, especially from the Iceni tribe, led by Queen Boudica, a warrior queen whose rebellion in 60 CE nearly drove the Romans out. But it failed, and Rome tightened its grip. Soon, the land began to change. Londinium rose by the river Thames. Bath was built around hot springs, complete with temples and baths. A wall was drawn across the north, Hadrian's Wall, to mark the edge of empire. Latin mingled with native languages. Villas appeared in the countryside. For 400 years, Britain was a Roman province. But the empire was not eternal. By the 4th century, Rome began to weaken. In 410 CE, the legions withdrew, leaving Britain behind. The Roman roads and cities remained, but the protection was gone. Darkness crept in again, not of ignorance, but of instability. And soon, new invaders would arrive. As Roman authority faded into memory, Britain found itself exposed. The once protected Roman towns began to decay, trade routes fell silent, and the island became vulnerable to new forces from across the sea. From the east came waves of migrants and raiders, Angles, Saxons, and Jutes. These Germanic tribes crossed from what is now Denmark and northern Germany, arriving not as one single invasion, but over generations, slowly settling along the eastern and southern coasts. They came first as mercenaries, hired to defend the island from raiders like the Picts and the Irish. But soon, they carved out lands for themselves, pushing the native Britons westward, into Wales, Cornwall, and the far north. The old Roman ways faded. Latin disappeared. Churches were abandoned. A new culture began to take shape, one built on oral tradition, tribal kingship, and the sword. These settlers formed small kingdoms: Kent, Sussex, Wessex, Essex, East Anglia, Mercia, and Northumbria. This was the age of the Heptarchy, meaning 7 kingdoms, though their number and power shifted constantly. They warred with one another, forged alliances through marriage or blood, and slowly expanded their influence. During this time, the Christian faith, once strong under Rome, began to return. Missionaries like St. Augustine arrived in 597 CE, sent by Pope Gregory the Great to convert the Anglo-Saxons. Augustine became the first Archbishop of Canterbury, laying the foundations of the English Church. Though conversion was gradual and uneven, the monasteries that followed became centers of learning and preservation. In a world of tribal warfare and shifting power, they copied manuscripts, taught Latin, and kept alive the memory of classical knowledge. One of the most famous figures of this age was a man whose existence is still debated, King Arthur. Whether real or legend, he symbolizes the last resistance of native Britons against the Saxons. But in time, resistance faded, and the Germanic tribes became the rulers of the land. From their tongues, a new language began to form, Old English, a blend of tribal dialects that would evolve over centuries into modern English. By the 8th century, Anglo-Saxon England had become more organized. Kings issued laws. Coins were minted. A sense of identity, though not yet national, was growing. But stability, once again, would not last. In the late 700s, the horizon darkened with sails. Viking ships, long and narrow, began appearing along the coasts. These Norse raiders struck with terrifying speed, burning monasteries, looting towns, and disappearing before help could arrive. In 793, the attack on the monastery at Lindisfarne sent shockwaves through the Christian world. It marked the beginning of the Viking Age in Britain. Some Vikings came only to plunder, but others came to settle. They sailed up rivers, established camps, and took land. By the mid-9th century, they controlled large parts of eastern England, known as the Danelaw. Towns like York became Norse strongholds. It was a time of fear, but also of exchange. Norse words entered English. Norse customs shaped local law. Yet resistance was not over. In the southern kingdom of Wessex, a young king would rise, one whose legacy would echo through time. In the kingdom of Wessex, surrounded by Viking-conquered lands, rose a leader unlike any before him. His name was Alfred, born in 849 CE, and by the time he came to the throne in 871, much of England lay under Viking rule. The Norse had pushed far inland. Major towns had fallen. The future of Anglo-Saxon rule hung by a thread. Alfred was not a warrior by nature. He was quiet, scholarly, and deeply religious. But desperation called for strength. In a series of battles and clever defenses, he held Wessex against the odds. When the Danes captured much of the south and forced Alfred into hiding, he retreated to the marshes of Somerset, regrouped, and returned. In 878, at the Battle of Edington, Alfred achieved a decisive victory, forcing the Viking leader Guthrum to convert to Christianity and agree to a treaty dividing England. This peace led to the formal establishment of the Danelaw in the east and Alfred's control in the west and south. But Alfred understood that force alone was not enough. To rebuild his kingdom, he turned to education, law, and reform. He reorganized the military, created a system of fortified towns called Buzz, and emphasized learning. He even personally translated Latin texts into Old English so that knowledge could reach his people. Alfred is often called the first king of the English, not because he ruled the entire land, but because he envisioned a united kingdom bound by common language, law, and faith. His descendants would carry that vision forward. Over the next century, his lineage continued the fight to unify England. Kings like Edward the Elder and Athelstan expanded Wessex's control. In 927, Athelstan achieved something extraordinary. He became the first king to rule all of what we now call England. He defeated the last of the Norse and Celtic rulers, brought the Welsh and Scots into alliance, and established coinage, legal codes, and foreign relations that gave England real presence in Europe. But unity was never permanent. The Vikings returned. In the late 10th century, renewed Norse invasions tested the fragile kingdom once again. Under King Athelred, known harshly to history as the Unready, England suffered repeated attacks. Desperate, Athelred ordered the massacre of Danish settlers in 1002, an act that led to brutal retaliation. In 1013, Sweyn Forkbeard, King of Denmark, invaded and briefly became King of England. After his death, his son Nut the Great claimed the throne in 1016. Nut ruled not just England, but also Denmark and Norway, creating a North Sea empire. Remarkably, he brought stability. Though a foreign ruler, Nut respected English law and worked with the church. For a time, his reign brought a strange peace to the island. After Nut's sons died without heirs, the Anglo-Saxon line was restored with Edward the Confessor in 1042. A pious, gentle ruler, Edward spent much of his youth in Normandy and surrounded himself with Norman advisors. His reign was relatively calm, but he left behind a deadly question: he had no children, no heir. When Edward died in 1066, 3 powerful men claimed the English throne. One of them, across the Channel in Normandy, was preparing an army that would change England forever. The year 1066 stands like a towering marker in British history, a year of 3 kings, 3 battles, and 1 conquest that would reshape the island's language, laws, and ruling class for centuries to come. When Edward the Confessor died without an heir in January of 1066, the throne passed to Harold Godwin's son, a powerful English noble and member of one of the most influential families in the kingdom. But Harold's claim was immediately challenged. From the north came Harald Hardrada, the king of Norway, who believed he had a rightful claim based on earlier promises. And from across the Channel, William, Duke of Normandy, prepared his own invasion. William insisted that Edward had promised him the crown and accused Harold of breaking an oath of support. Harold first marched north to face Hardrada. On September 25th, at the Battle of Stamford Bridge, Harold won a stunning victory, defeating the Norwegians and killing Hardrada. But there was no time to rest. Just 3 days later, William landed on the southern coast of England, near Hastings. Harold forced his tired army to march south. On October 14, 1066, the 2 forces met at the Battle of Hastings. The English fought behind a shield wall, holding firm against Norman cavalry and archers. But after hours of bloody combat, the wall broke. Harold was killed, legend says, by an arrow to the eye, and his army scattered. William was victorious. On Christmas Day, William the Conqueror was crowned King of England in Westminster Abbey. The Anglo-Saxon age had ended. The Normans, descended from Viking settlers in France, now ruled the land. William moved quickly to secure his control. He built castles, strong, stone symbols of dominance, across the country. The Tower of London was among the first. Rebellions were crushed without mercy, especially in the north, where the Herring of the North left entire regions burned and abandoned. But William also brought structure. In 1086, he ordered a vast survey of his new kingdom, recording lands, livestock, and people. This document, known as the Domesday Book, remains one of the most remarkable administrative records in medieval Europe. It gave William a detailed picture of his realm and allowed him to collect taxes efficiently. The Normans replaced the Anglo-Saxon nobility almost entirely. French became the language of the court, the church, and the elite, while English survived mostly among peasants. Over time, the 2 languages fused, enriching English with thousands of new words and shaping it into something new. Norman rule also changed architecture, law, and governance. The feudal system was firmly established. The king granted land to his barons in exchange for loyalty and military service, and those barons ruled over knights and peasants. It was a strict, hierarchical world, built on land and loyalty. William died in 1087, but his dynasty endured. His sons, William II and Henry I, continued his policies. Disputes over succession would follow, and rival claims to the throne would remain a recurring theme in British history. Still, the foundations of modern England were forming. A centralized monarchy, a common law system, a blend of languages and cultures, all planted by the Normans in the turbulent soil of the 11th century. And soon, from this foundation, a new idea would begin to stir: the struggle between kings and their barons, and the slow birth of constitutional rule. After the death of William's sons, the throne passed to his daughter's son, Henry II, in 1154. With him began the long and powerful line of the Plantagenets, a dynasty that would rule England for over 3 centuries. Henry II was an energetic and intelligent king, determined to strengthen royal control. He expanded the legal system, introduced royal courts, and laid the foundations of what we now call common law, a system where law was based on precedent and the king's justice reached across the realm. But Henry's reign was not peaceful. His greatest struggle came not with foreign enemies, but with the Church. His once close friend, Thomas Becket, had been appointed Archbishop of Canterbury, but their alliance quickly collapsed as Becket defended church privilege against royal authority. After years of bitter disputes, Becket was murdered in 1170, inside Canterbury Cathedral, by knights who believed they were acting on the king's wishes. The murder shocked Europe, and though Henry denied ordering it, he was forced to do penance. Henry also faced rebellion from within his own family. His sons, Richard, Geoffrey, and John, turned against him. When Henry died in 1189, his son Richard I, known as Richard the Lionheart, took the throne. Richard is famous for his role in the Third Crusade, a series of battles in the Holy Land against Muslim forces led by Saladin. Though a skilled warrior, Richard spent little time in England and left its governance to others. He died in 1199, and the crown passed to his younger brother, John. King John's reign is remembered as one of failure and crisis. He lost most of England's territories in France and demanded heavy taxes from his barons to fund unsuccessful wars. He quarreled with the Pope, was excommunicated, and governed with increasing harshness. By 1215, the barons had had enough. That year, at Runnymede, they forced John to seal a document that would echo through the centuries, the Magna Carta. Though intended as a practical list of feudal demands, the Magna Carta introduced the idea that even the king must obey the law. It protected church rights, barred illegal imprisonment, and limited taxation without baronial consent. While much of its content was specific to the time, its symbolic power grew stronger with each generation. John died in 1216, leaving the crown to his young son Henry III, who ruled for a long and often troubled period. Like his father, he faced resistance from nobles unhappy with royal power. In 1264, civil war broke out. Led by Simon de Montfort, a group of rebellious barons briefly seized control and even summoned what many historians consider the first English Parliament, inviting not only nobles but also commoners. Though the rebellion was eventually crushed, the idea had taken root that kings should consult wider society when making decisions. In time, that idea would evolve into Parliament as we know it today. The Plantagenet dynasty continued, and with it, the kingdom grew in power and complexity. Kings now ruled not only England but vast territories in France. The island was no longer isolated, it was deeply entangled in European affairs. But these claims would soon spark one of the longest and most destructive conflicts in medieval history. By the early 14th century, England stood at a crossroads. Its kings still claimed vast territories in France, land inherited from old Norman ties and marriages. But as French kings consolidated their own power, they sought to absorb these holdings. The tension finally erupted into one of the longest and most complex wars in medieval Europe, the 100 Years' War, a series of campaigns and truces lasting from 1337 to 1453. The conflict began when Edward III of England claimed the French crown through his mother's lineage. The French rejected his claim, and war followed. But this was no single, continuous battle. Instead, it was a long series of wars, broken by uneasy peace. England experienced great victories and bitter defeats, moments of glory and long stretches of loss. At the heart of England's early success was the evolution of warfare. At Crécy in 1346 and Poitiers in 1356, the English longbow, wielded by common soldiers, shattered the ranks of heavily armored French knights. The longbow gave England an edge in mobility and distance. At Poitiers, the French king himself was captured. But war came at a cost. While English armies campaigned abroad, disaster struck at home. In 1348, the Black Death arrived on English shores. The plague killed nearly half the population within a few years. Villages emptied. Labor became scarce. Entire communities vanished. The feudal system began to fracture, as peasants, suddenly in demand, demanded better wages and conditions. Social unrest followed. In 1381, thousands of peasants rose in rebellion, marching to London in the Peasants' Revolt. Though it was quickly crushed, it sent a message: the people were no longer silent. Meanwhile, the war with France dragged on. Edward III died, and the crown passed to his grandson, Richard II, a boy king. Richard's reign was marked by court intrigue and growing discontent. His attempts to centralize power, silence dissent, and control the nobility only deepened unrest. In 1399, he was deposed by his cousin, Henry Bolingbroke, who became Henry IV, founding the House of Lancaster. This event was more than a change of king. It was a breach in the line of succession. From this moment, the seeds of a civil war were sown. Henry IV spent much of his reign suppressing revolts and asserting his legitimacy. His son, Henry V, would turn again to France to prove the strength of the Lancastrian claim. Henry V was young, bold, and brilliant in battle. In 1415, he led a small English force deep into enemy territory and met a much larger French army at Agincourt. What followed was one of the most celebrated victories in English military history. Mud, rain, and longbows gave the English an overwhelming advantage. Thousands of French knights were cut down. Henry's reputation soared, and in 1420, he secured a treaty that made him heir to the French throne. But glory was fleeting. Henry died suddenly in 1422, leaving a baby son, Henry VI, to inherit two crowns. A child king could not hold such a fragile empire together. French resistance grew, especially under the leadership of Joan of Arc, a peasant girl who inspired armies and reversed English fortunes. Slowly, English control in France crumbled. By 1453, the 100 Years' War ended. England lost all its French lands except for Calais. The dream of a dual monarchy vanished. The treasury was empty. Soldiers returned home to a country divided and unstable. And now, with a weak king on the throne, the royal houses of England would turn against each other. By the mid-15th century, England was exhausted, battered by plague, drained by war, and ruled by a fragile monarch. Henry VI, son of the famed Henry V, was gentle, pious, and mentally unstable. He preferred prayer to politics and struggled to assert authority over the feuding nobles around him. As royal power weakened, old rivalries surfaced, and ambition turned into violence. Two great houses claimed the right to rule: the House of Lancaster, to which Henry VI belonged, and the House of York, descended from the same royal bloodline but through a different branch. Their symbols, a red rose for Lancaster and a white rose for York, gave the conflict its name, the Wars of the Roses. The wars began in 1455, with the First Battle of St. Albans, and would last for over 30 years, plunging England into a brutal civil war. It wasn't constant fighting. Years of uneasy peace were broken by sudden outbreaks of violence, shifting alliances, and betrayals. Great families turned against one another. Power passed rapidly from one side to the other. In 1461, after a string of Yorkist victories, Edward IV, a charismatic and capable warrior, seized the throne. For a time, the kingdom seemed stable. But Edward's unexpected marriage to a commoner, Elizabeth Woodville, alienated powerful allies. After his death, his young son, Edward V, was meant to succeed him. But the boy and his younger brother disappeared into the Tower of London, never to be seen again. Many believe they were murdered. Taking advantage of the chaos, Edward's brother Richard, Duke of Gloucester, declared himself king, Richard III. His reign was short and troubled. Though he passed reforms and strengthened the law, His claim was stained by the disappearance of his nephews. Opposition grew. In 1485, a new challenger emerged from exile, Henry Tudor, a distant Lancastrian with a thin claim to the throne. At the Battle of Bosworth Field, Henry's forces defeated Richard's army. Richard was killed in the fighting, famously shouting, a horse, my kingdom for a horse!" And Henry was crowned Henry VII on the battlefield itself. Henry's victory ended the Wars of the Roses. To secure peace, he married Elizabeth of York, uniting the red and white roses into the Tudor rose, a symbol of reconciliation. His new dynasty, the House of Tudor, would go on to rule for over a century and oversee one of the most dramatic transformations in English history. Henry VI's reign focused on stability. He curbed the power of the nobility, restored royal finances, and promoted trade. He ruled cautiously, always aware of the fragile peace he had inherited. Though rebellions flickered, none succeeded in unseating him. Yet it would be his son, not Henry himself, who would shape the nation's future in ways few could imagine. A young prince, athletic, well-educated, and charming, prepared to inherit not just a crown, but a restless kingdom on the edge of religious and political upheaval. When Henry VIII became king in 1509, England stood at a crossroads. Young, charismatic, and filled with ambition, Henry appeared every bit the Renaissance prince, fluent in Latin, skilled in music, and devoted to sport and spectacle. He married Catherine of Aragon, the Spanish princess who had previously been wed to his older brother, and for many years their union seemed secure. But beneath the pageantry of court life, pressure built. Henry desperately wanted a male heir to secure his dynasty. Catherine bore him several children, but only one, Mary, survived infancy. As years passed and no son was born, Henry's desire for a new marriage grew into a political crisis. He petitioned the Pope to annul his marriage, claiming it had been cursed from the start. But the Pope, under pressure from Catherine's powerful relatives in Spain, refused. What followed was one of the most significant events in English history. Frustrated by papal resistance, Henry broke away from the Roman Catholic Church. In 1534, Parliament passed the Act of Supremacy, declaring Henry the supreme head of the Church of England. The English Reformation had begun, not from theological rebellion, but from royal necessity. Henry dissolved monasteries across the country, seizing their wealth and redistributing their lands. Ancient abbeys were destroyed or sold, and centuries of monastic life ended in a matter of years. The move enriched the crown and powerful nobles but caused deep social and cultural upheaval. Thousands of monks, nuns, and servants were displaced. Art, libraries, and relics were lost forever. Henry married Anne Boleyn, hoping she would provide a son. She bore him a daughter, Elizabeth, but no male heir. Their marriage soon soured. In 1536, Anne was arrested, accused of adultery and treason, and executed after a short trial. Henry's reign would be marked by 5 more marriages, only one of which, his third wife, Jane Seymour, bore him a son, Edward VI. Despite these personal dramas, Henry maintained tight control over both church and state. Though he broke from Rome, he remained largely conservative in doctrine, persecuting both Catholics who remained loyal to the Pope and Protestants who pushed for more radical reforms. His rule was authoritarian, marked by grandeur and fear, ambition and contradiction. When Henry died in 1547, his 9-year-old son Edward inherited the throne. During Edward VI's short reign, Protestant reforms accelerated. Services were held in English. The Book of Common Prayer was introduced. Images were removed from churches. The Reformation took deeper root. But Edward died young, and the crown passed briefly to Lady Jane Grey, before Henry's eldest daughter, Mary I, claimed her place as queen. A devout Catholic, Mary reversed the reforms of her father and brother. She returned England to papal authority and married Philip II of Spain, a match that stirred deep unease. Her reign saw the persecution and execution of hundreds of Protestants, earning her the name Bloody Mary. Mary died in 1558, childless, and the throne passed to her half-sister, a queen who would usher in a golden age and leave a legacy that still echoes through time. When Elizabeth I ascended the throne in 1558, England stood divided by religion, uncertain in leadership, and threatened by powerful enemies abroad. Yet over the next 45 years, Elizabeth would guide her kingdom through crisis and triumph, leaving behind an era so vibrant and transformative that it came to be known as the Elizabethan Age. Elizabeth, daughter of Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn, was only 25 when she became queen. Intelligent, politically astute, and fiercely independent, she understood the dangers of her position. The nation was torn between Catholic and Protestant loyalties. Elizabeth chose a moderate path. She restored Protestantism, but avoided the harsh persecution of dissenters. Her religious settlement created the foundation for the Church of England as it still exists today, Protestant in doctrine, but retaining elements of traditional ritual and structure. She never married, despite pressure from her advisors and foreign powers. Suitors came from across Europe, but Elizabeth used marriage as a diplomatic tool, promising nothing, yet gaining everything. She became known as the Virgin Queen, and symbolically she married her country instead. Her court became a center of learning and art. William Shakespeare, Christopher Marlowe, and Edmund Spenser wrote their greatest works during her reign. The English language blossomed. Music, poetry, and drama flourished under royal patronage. The Elizabethan stage gave voice to stories of kings and clowns, revenge and romance, ambition and downfall. But the age was not all peace and poetry. England faced threats from abroad, especially from Spain, the most powerful Catholic monarchy in Europe. In 1588, King Philip II sent the Spanish Armada, a vast fleet of warships intended to invade and conquer England. Elizabeth addressed her troops at Tilbury in armor, declaring that though she had the body of a weak and feeble woman, she had the heart and stomach of a king. The Armada was defeated by a combination of English naval skill and stormy weather. It was a turning point. Spain's power waned, and England's confidence soared. Under Elizabeth, England also took its first steps toward empire. Explorers like Sir Francis Drake, Sir Walter Raleigh, and John Hawkins sailed to the Americas, Africa, and beyond. Trade expanded. Colonies were attempted, though not all successfully. In 1585, Raleigh established the Roanoke colony in North America, but it mysteriously vanished, remembered as the Lost Colony. Still, the seeds of global ambition were planted. At home, Elizabeth maintained a careful balance of power. She used patronage to reward loyalty and kept rivals close. Her reign wasn't without rebellion. Plots were uncovered, including attempts by Catholics to place her cousin, Mary, Queen of Scots, on the throne. Mary was eventually imprisoned and, in 1587, executed for treason. Elizabeth's death in 1603 marked the end of the Tudor dynasty. She left no heir. Yet her legacy was profound. She preserved the realm during dangerous times, fostered a cultural renaissance, and began England's rise as a global power. The people mourned her deeply, and for generations she would be remembered as Gloriana, the brilliant queen who gave England light in a dark world. But a new chapter was about to begin, one shaped by a different family, foreign roots, and a vision of united kingdoms. When Elizabeth I died in 1603 without an heir, the English crown passed peacefully, yet symbolically, to a distant relative, James VI of Scotland, son of Mary, Queen of Scots. He became James I of England, uniting the crowns of England and Scotland under one monarch for the first time in history. Though the two kingdoms remained legally separate, the idea of a united kingdom was born. James was an educated king, a scholar who believed deeply in divine right. The idea that monarchs ruled by God's will. He commissioned the King James Bible, published in 1611, a translation that would shape English language and culture for centuries. Yet his reign was uneasy. Parliament resented his foreign upbringing, and tensions grew between royal authority and parliamentary rights. Religious tensions also simmered. Though James was Protestant, he faced growing unrest from Puritans, who wanted to purge the Church of its remaining Catholic rituals, and Catholics, who faced legal restrictions and suspicion. In 1605, a group of Catholic conspirators, led by Guy Fawkes, attempted to blow up the Houses of Parliament and kill the king in what became known as the Gunpowder Plot. It failed, and the conspirators were executed, but the event deepened distrust and led to even harsher laws against Catholics. James died in 1625, and his son Charles I inherited the throne. Charles shared his father's belief in absolute monarchy but lacked his political subtlety. He ruled without Parliament for 11 years, raising money through unpopular taxes and forced loans. His marriage to a Catholic French princess, Henrietta Maria, only increased public suspicion. In 1640, desperate for funds to suppress a rebellion in Scotland, Charles was forced to recall Parliament. What followed was a constitutional crisis that would spiral into civil war. Parliament demanded reforms. Charles resisted. When he tried to arrest 5 members of Parliament by marching into the chamber himself, the breach of tradition shocked the nation. By 1642, the kingdom had split. On one side were the Royalists, or Cavaliers, who supported the king. On the other, the Parliamentarians, or Roundheads, who fought for parliamentary control. The English Civil War had begun. It was a brutal and complex conflict. Families were divided. Cities were sieged. Armies marched across the countryside. The parliamentarian forces, led by Oliver Cromwell, eventually gained the upper hand. After several years of war, Charles I was captured, tried for treason, and, shockingly, executed in 1649. For the first time in English history, the monarchy was abolished. England became a republic, known as the Commonwealth, under Cromwell's leadership. Though intended as a new era of freedom, Cromwell's rule became increasingly authoritarian. He banned many traditional celebrations, censored the press, and dissolved Parliament when it defied him. After his death in 1658, the republic crumbled. In 1660, the monarchy was restored. Charles's son, Charles II, was invited back to rule. The people celebrated his return in what became known as the Restoration. The theaters reopened, court life resumed, and England briefly exhaled after years of tension. But the question of power, between king and parliament, between freedom and control, had not been resolved. And the next decades would bring fire, plague, and a final reckoning that would shape modern Britain. The latter half of the 17th century in England was a time of rebuilding and upheaval. In 1665, the Great Plague struck London, killing an estimated 100,000 people, about a quarter of the city's population. Just a year later, in 1666, disaster struck again when the Great Fire of London broke out. It began in a bakery on Pudding Lane and raged for 4 days, destroying over 13,000 houses, 87 churches, and iconic structures, including the old St. Paul's Cathedral. Though the fire caused immense destruction, it also cleared the way for modern urban planning. The city was rebuilt with wider streets, new building regulations, and the magnificent design of the new St. Paul's Cathedral by architect Sir Christopher Wren. London emerged from the ashes stronger and more organized, ready to face the challenges of a changing world. Meanwhile, political tensions simmered under the surface. King Charles II, though popular for restoring the monarchy, ruled cautiously between the demands of Parliament and the temptations of absolutism. His brother and heir, James II, however, was openly Catholic and sought to expand royal power, alarming a largely Protestant England. In 1688, fearing a return to Catholic dominance and absolute rule, Parliament invited William of Orange, a Protestant prince from the Netherlands, to intervene. William landed with an army in what became known as the Glorious Revolution, a bloodless coup that forced James II to flee. William and his wife, Mary II, ruled jointly under conditions that limited royal authority. The revolution marked a turning point. It established that the monarchy could not rule without the consent of Parliament. The Bill of Rights of 1689 laid the foundation for a constitutional monarchy, guaranteeing free elections, regular parliaments, and basic civil rights. It effectively ended the idea of divine right, and placed sovereignty in the hands of the people's representatives. This new balance of power paved the way for political stability, economic growth, and eventually, the British Empire's expansion. The foundations of modern democracy were being set, though struggles and debates over rights, religion, and governance would continue for centuries. As the 17th century closed, Britain was becoming more than a collection of kingdoms and nobles. It was shaping into a nation governed by laws and institutions, a place where power was shared and contested, and where the voices of many would gradually be heard. As the 18th century dawned, Britain was no longer simply an island kingdom, but a growing global power. The constitutional monarchy established after the Glorious Revolution provided political stability that encouraged trade, innovation, and overseas expansion. British explorers, merchants, and soldiers sailed to distant lands, carving out an empire that would eventually span continents. The British Empire expanded rapidly during this century, with colonies in North America, the Caribbean, Africa, and Asia. The trading company known as the East India Company became especially powerful, controlling vast territories in India and shaping politics and economics far beyond Britain's shores. Yet empire building was not without conflict. Britain fought wars with France and Spain for dominance overseas and battled indigenous peoples resisting colonial rule. The struggle for control of North America culminated in the 7 Years' War, 1756 to 1763. A global conflict sometimes called the First World War. Britain emerged victorious, gaining Canada and many territories in India. Back home, Britain underwent a transformation as profound as empire building, the Industrial Revolution. Starting in the late 1700s, new technologies revolutionized production. The invention of the steam engine by James Watt, the mechanization of textiles with the spinning jenny, and innovations in iron and coal mining turned Britain into the world's first industrial nation. Cities like Manchester, Birmingham, and Liverpool grew rapidly as factories multiplied and people moved from rural areas to work in industry. This urbanization changed society fundamentally. While wealth increased, working conditions were often harsh, and social inequalities became stark. Child labor, long hours, and pollution were common. The new industrial economy also fueled demands for political reform. The existing parliamentary system, dominated by landed elites, was increasingly out of step with the growing urban middle and working classes. Calls for wider voting rights, fairer representation, and social improvements grew louder. Meanwhile, ideas from the Enlightenment spread through Britain's educated classes. Philosophers and scientists promoted reason, liberty, and progress. These ideas influenced politics, economics, and social thought, encouraging movements for abolition of slavery, education reform, and religious tolerance. By the end of the century, Britain was poised to dominate global affairs politically, economically, and culturally. But the rapid pace of change also created tensions and challenges that would define the nation's path through the coming centuries. The 19th century ushered in an era of dramatic change and unprecedented power for Britain. The Industrial Revolution matured, transforming the economy and society. At the same time, political and social reforms slowly reshaped the nation's institutions and values. Under the long reign of Queen Victoria, 1837 to 1901, Britain reached the height of its global influence. The Victorian era was a time of strict social codes, rapid urbanization, and technological innovation. The railways spread across the country, connecting cities and towns. Telegraph wires shrank distances, and factories churned out goods that fueled both domestic markets and the expanding empire. Yet beneath the surface, tension stirred. The early 1800s saw growing demands for political reform. Many working-class men and women were excluded from voting. The Reform Acts of 1832, 1867, and 1884 gradually expanded suffrage, though full universal voting was still far off. Movements like the Chartists campaigned for rights including secret ballots and annual parliaments. Social reformers addressed the harsh realities of industrial life. Figures like Florence Nightingale revolutionized nursing and healthcare, while Charles Dickens highlighted poverty and injustice in his novels. public health improved slowly as sanitation systems were built and housing regulations introduced. Internationally, Britain continued to extend its empire, claiming territories in Africa, Asia, and the Pacific. The phrase, "the sun never sets on the British Empire," reflected its vastness. However, colonial rule was often marked by conflict and exploitation, sparking resistance and nationalist movements. Politically, the century was marked by rivalry between the conservatives and the liberals, as well as emerging voices from labor groups. The beginnings of the Labour Party in the late 1800s signaled a new force representing working-class interests. Meanwhile, science and culture flourished. The Darwinian theory of evolution challenged traditional beliefs, while advances in medicine and engineering reshaped life. British literature, from the poetry of Alfred Tennyson to the novels of Thomas Hardy, explored themes of progress and uncertainty. As the century closed, Britain faced new challenges. Industrial competition from other nations grew, social inequalities persisted, and the empire demanded ever more resources and attention. The stage was set for conflicts and transformations in the 20th century. The dawn of the 20th century brought both hope and looming darkness to Britain. By 1914, the nation was a global empire with vast territories, unparalleled naval power, and a proud sense of destiny. But beneath the surface, tensions brewed, nationalism, alliances, and arms races across Europe threatened to engulf the world in conflict. When the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria ignited the powder keg of Europe in June 1914, Britain was drawn into the First World War alongside its allies. The war would become one of the deadliest conflicts in history. Millions of British men enlisted, from the industrial cities and rural villages alike. They faced the horrors of trench warfare on the Western Front, mud gas attacks, relentless artillery, and staggering casualties. Battles such as the Somme and Passchendaele symbolized a brutal stalemate and sacrifice. At home, the war effort transformed society. Women entered factories and farms to replace men at the front. Rationing, censorship, and propaganda shaped daily life. The war accelerated calls for political reform, contributing to the passage of the Representation of the People Act in 1918, which granted voting rights to some women for the first time. The war ended in 1918 with an armistice, but its effects were profound and lasting. The Treaty of Versailles redrew the map of Europe but sowed seeds of future conflict. Britain faced economic challenges, loss of life, and a shaken national psyche. In the 1920s and 1930s, Britain struggled to adapt. The empire remained vast but faced rising independence movements. The Great Depression hit hard, leading to unemployment and social unrest. Politically, the Labour Party rose to prominence, forming the first majority government in 1945. As the world edged toward another global conflict, Britain prepared once again to defend itself and its ideals. By 1939, Europe was once again on the brink of war. Britain, remembering the horrors of the Great War and committed to stopping aggression, declared war on Germany after the invasion of Poland. The Second World War would test the nation's resilience like never before. The early years were difficult. The Battle of Britain in 1940 saw the Royal Air Force defending the skies against relentless German bombing. London and other cities suffered the Blitz, months of nightly air raids that killed thousands and destroyed homes. Yet the British spirit endured, epitomized by Prime Minister Winston Churchill's resolute leadership and stirring speeches. Britain fought alongside its allies across multiple fronts, in Africa, Asia, and Europe. The war brought technological advances and social change. Women joined the workforce in unprecedented numbers, while rationing and communal effort became everyday life. Victory came in 1945, but at a heavy cost. The economy was shattered, cities lay in ruins, and the empire was beginning to unravel. Independence movements accelerated, and soon countries like India would gain freedom. Post-war Britain embraced the creation of the welfare state under the leadership of Clement Attlee. The National Health Service was established, providing healthcare free at the point of use. Housing, education, and social security reforms aimed to rebuild a fairer society. Yet the Cold War soon defined international politics. Britain found itself aligned with the United States and NATO, facing new threats. Domestically, the nation balanced recovery with modernizing industries and infrastructure. The era marked both endings and beginnings, the twilight of empire and the dawn of a new Britain, adapting to a changed world. After World War II, Britain faced the reality that its vast empire could no longer be maintained. The process of decolonization began, reshaping the global landscape and Britain's own identity. The largest jewel of the empire, India, gained independence in 1947, followed by Pakistan, marking the start of a wave of new nations emerging from colonial rule. Throughout the 1950s and 60s, many African, Caribbean, and Asian countries gained freedom. This rapid change brought challenges and opportunities. Britain redefined its role in the world, shifting from imperial ruler to partner in international organizations like the United Nations and the Commonwealth of Nations, a voluntary association of former colonies. At home, Britain underwent social transformation. The post-war welfare state expanded, creating the National Health Service, and efforts to improve education, housing, and employment reshaped everyday life. The 1960s brought cultural revolutions. Music, fashion, and attitudes shifted dramatically, symbolized by figures like the Beatles and movements for civil rights and gender equality. Economically, Britain faced struggles with industrial decline and inflation, while also modernizing its economy and infrastructure. Immigration from former colonies diversified society, creating multicultural cities and new challenges in integration and identity. Politically, Britain experienced alternating governments led by Conservative and Labour parties. The rise of regional nationalism in Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland sparked debates on autonomy and self-government, eventually leading to the creation of devolved parliaments. By the late 20th century, Britain was a complex nation balancing tradition and change, grappling with its imperial past while embracing a diverse future. As the 21st century began, Britain faced a new set of challenges and opportunities. The country was firmly established as a modern democracy with a rich cultural heritage, but the world around it was rapidly changing. Britain's role on the global stage, its economy, and society all evolved in response to new realities. One of the most significant developments was Britain's relationship with the European Union (EU). After joining the European Economic Community in 1973, Britain gradually became more integrated with Europe. The EU brought economic benefits and political cooperation but also sparked debates over national sovereignty and identity. By the 2010s, calls for reform and a re-examination of Britain's place in Europe grew louder. In 2016, the country held a historic referendum, famously known as Brexit, where a majority voted to leave the EU. This decision triggered years of complex negotiations, political turmoil, and societal division. The United Kingdom officially left the EU in 2020, embarking on a new path with uncertain outcomes. Meanwhile, Britain continued to grapple with internal issues. The question of Scottish independence resurfaced strongly, leading to a referendum in 2014 where Scotland voted to remain part of the UK, but with ongoing debates about its future. Devolution expanded powers to Wales and Northern Ireland, though tensions, especially in Northern Ireland, remained delicate. On the cultural front, Britain remained a vibrant and diverse society. Immigration, globalization, and technology transformed cities and daily life. The arts, science, and education continued to flourish, maintaining Britain's reputation as a world leader in innovation and culture. At the same time, challenges like economic inequality, housing shortages, and environmental concerns demanded attention. Political debates focused on how to balance tradition with progress, unity with diversity. As the UK moved deeper into the century, it faced the task of defining its identity, between past and future, island and global citizen, unity and division. The 21st century has seen Britain's society and culture undergo profound transformation, reflecting global trends and local challenges alike. Rapid advances in technology, communications, and transportation have shrunk distances and connected people more than ever before. Britain's population has become increasingly diverse. Immigration from across the world has enriched culture, cuisine, language, and traditions. Cities such as London, Manchester, and Birmingham have evolved into multicultural hubs, vibrant with a blend of customs and communities. This diversity has brought both opportunities and tensions. Efforts to promote inclusion, equality, and social justice have made progress, but debates over identity, integration, and immigration continue to shape politics and public discourse. The arts and media remain central to Britain's global influence. British music, film, literature, and television have a lasting impact worldwide. From iconic bands like Coldplay and Adele to celebrated authors and innovative filmmakers, Britain's cultural exports shape how the world views the nation. Education and science have also flourished. British universities continue to attract students globally, producing groundbreaking research and innovations. Fields such as medicine, technology, and environmental science have seen important advances, positioning Britain as a leader in tackling global issues like climate change and public health. Social movements advocating for gender equality, LGBTQ+ rights, and racial justice have gained momentum. Public conversations about mental health, poverty, and access to healthcare reflect a growing awareness of complex social issues. Despite progress, challenges remain. Economic disparities, housing crises, and political polarization test the country's resilience. The COVID-19 pandemic revealed vulnerabilities but also demonstrated community strength and innovation. Modern Britain balances tradition and change, heritage and innovation, unity and diversity, continuing to write its story in an ever-shifting world. In recent years, Britain's political landscape has been marked by significant change and uncertainty. The aftermath of Brexit continued to influence domestic and international affairs, reshaping trade, diplomacy, and legislation. Negotiating new relationships with the European Union and other global partners became a priority for successive governments. The United Kingdom's internal unity faced renewed tests. The Scottish National Party pushed for a second independence referendum, citing Brexit as a major shift in circumstances. Wales and Northern Ireland also experienced growing calls for increased autonomy. Northern Ireland's delicate peace, established by the Good Friday Agreement in 1998, faced challenges related to customs and border arrangements post-Brexit. Economic issues remained central. The country dealt with the long-term impacts of the 2008 financial crisis, austerity measures, and later the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. Government responses included unprecedented public spending, support for healthcare, and efforts to stimulate recovery. Social debates intensified around topics such as immigration, national identity, climate change, and social justice. Political polarization grew, reflected in election results and public discourse. New political parties and movements emerged, while traditional parties adapted to changing priorities. The monarchy, a symbol of national continuity, underwent its own period of transition. The passing of Queen Elizabeth II in 2022, after a 70-year reign, marked the end of an era. Her son, Charles III, ascended the throne, inheriting a nation both proud of its history and facing modern complexities. As Britain continues to navigate the 21st century, it confronts the challenge of balancing its rich heritage with the demands of a globalized, interconnected world. The future remains unwritten, shaped by the decisions and dreams of its people. The story of Great Britain is one of transformation, resilience, and complexity. From its ancient roots as a land of tribes and forests, through centuries of conquest, union, and empire, it has continually evolved, shaped by conflict and cooperation, innovation and tradition. Britain's impact on the world is vast. Its language, legal systems, literature, and political ideas have influenced countless nations. The ideals of democracy, individual rights, and rule of law have their roots intertwined with British history, though not without struggles and contradictions. The British Empire, once the largest in history, brought both development and hardship. It connected distant peoples and cultures but also imposed control and sparked resistance. The process of decolonization reshaped global relationships and Britain's own identity, transforming it from an imperial power into a modern, multicultural nation. Throughout, Britain has faced challenges: civil wars, economic upheavals, social divisions, and world conflicts. Each era brought lessons and legacies, often painful but integral to the nation's character. Today, Britain balances its rich heritage with the demands of a rapidly changing world. Its people continue to debate, innovate, and redefine what it means to be British. The island nation remains a place where history and modernity coexist, a tapestry woven from centuries of human experience. As the story continues, it invites reflection, not just on the past, but on the shared future shaped by culture, community, and common purpose. Throughout its long history, Great Britain has been shaped by individuals whose actions and ideas left lasting marks on the nation and the world. From monarchs and politicians to writers, scientists, and reformers, these figures embody the spirit of change and continuity. William the Conqueror, whose invasion in 1066 reshaped England's governance and culture, set the stage for centuries of monarchy. Later, Henry VIII's break with Rome altered religious life forever. Elizabeth I's reign brought cultural flourishing and global ambition. In the Age of Revolution, Oliver Cromwell led a republic, challenging monarchy itself. The Enlightenment saw thinkers like John Locke advocate ideas of liberty and government by consent, influencing modern democracy. Industrial pioneers such as James Watt and Isambard Kingdom Brunel powered Britain's rise as a technological leader. Literature and arts flourished through voices like William Shakespeare, Jane Austen, and Charles Dickens, who captured the nation's soul and struggles. Social reformers like Florence Nightingale and Emmeline Pankhurst fought for health care and women's rights. Scientific breakthroughs by figures such as Isaac Newton and Charles Darwin transformed understanding of the natural world. Political leaders in the 20th century, including Winston Churchill, steered Britain through war and peace. Each of these people, and many more, contributed to a complex narrative, one of innovation and tradition, conflict and progress. Their legacies continue to inspire and challenge the nation. Britain's identity is woven from centuries of culture, tradition, and shared symbols that unite its people. These elements, both ancient and modern, reflect the country's history and values, providing continuity amid change. One of the most iconic symbols is the Union Jack, the national flag combining the crosses of England, Scotland, and Ireland. It represents unity, yet also the complexity of a nation made up of distinct countries and identities. The monarchy remains a powerful symbol. The pageantry of royal ceremonies, the changing of the guard, trooping the color, and coronations, connects the present to a long history of kings and queens. The monarchy embodies continuity, tradition, and national pride, even as it adapts to modern times. British traditions include centuries-old celebrations like Guy Fawkes Night, commemorating the foiled gunpowder plot of 1605, and Remembrance Day, honoring those who died in war. Seasonal festivals and royal events fill the calendar, providing moments of reflection and festivity. Literature and language are core to British culture. The works of Shakespeare, Milton, and modern authors continue to shape English language and storytelling worldwide. British humor, often dry and understated, reflects a unique way of viewing the world. Sports such as football, soccer, cricket, and rugby are deeply embedded in communities, bringing people together across social divides. Pubs and tea culture serve as social hubs, emphasizing community and tradition. Music, fashion, and art have long been sources of innovation and influence. From classical composers to the Beatles and contemporary artists, Britain's creative output has resonated globally. Together, these symbols and traditions form a tapestry of shared identity, connecting past and present, and helping define what it means to be British. The economic landscape of modern Britain has been shaped by dramatic shifts from its industrial past to a diverse, service-based economy. After the decline of heavy industries like coal mining, shipbuilding, and textiles in the mid-20th century, Britain faced the challenge of reinventing itself. The post-war boom gave way to economic difficulties in the 1970s, marked by inflation, strikes, and unemployment. Governments implemented policies to stabilize and modernize the economy, with varied success. The Thatcher era in the 1980s introduced privatization, deregulation, and market reforms, changing the role of the state and reshaping industries. The financial sector, centered in the City of London, grew into a global powerhouse, while technology and creative industries expanded. Britain became a hub for innovation, media, and services, influencing global markets. Socially, these economic changes brought both opportunity and inequality. While some prospered in new sectors, traditional working-class communities faced decline and hardship. Housing, education, and health services became central issues, with ongoing debates about access and quality. Immigration continued to influence demographics, contributing to cultural diversity and economic growth, but also sparking political debates and social challenges. Efforts to promote social mobility and combat poverty became key policy goals. Environmental concerns rose in prominence, with Britain playing a role in international agreements and advancing renewable energy and sustainability initiatives. Today, Britain's economy and society remain dynamic, adapting to global trends while rooted in a history of change and resilience. In the 21st century, Britain continues to nurture its rich cultural heritage while embracing innovation in education and the arts. The country's universities remain among the world's most prestigious, attracting students globally and contributing to research in science, technology, and the humanities. British literature, theatre, and film maintain international acclaim. The legacy of playwrights like Shakespeare lives on through modern productions and adaptations. Contemporary writers and filmmakers explore diverse stories reflecting Britain's multicultural society. Music remains a vital part of British culture, from classical concerts to popular genres like rock, pop, and grime. Festivals and live performances attract audiences worldwide, showcasing both established and emerging talents. Education reforms strive to balance tradition with new challenges. Policies emphasize widening access, improving standards, and preparing students for a globalized world. Vocational training, digital literacy, and lifelong learning have become increasingly important. Digital technology shapes cultural consumption and education, with online platforms providing new opportunities for creativity and learning. Libraries, museums, and galleries evolve to engage wider audiences, blending history with interactive experiences. The arts and education play a crucial role in fostering social cohesion, understanding, and innovation. As Britain moves forward, these fields help preserve its identity while encouraging growth and adaptation. In the 21st century, Britain's role on the global stage remains significant yet complex. No longer the center of a vast empire, the United Kingdom navigates new international realities, alliances, and challenges. Britain is a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council, reflecting its historical role in world affairs. It maintains close ties with traditional allies such as the United States, Canada, and members of the Commonwealth. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, remains a cornerstone of its defense policy. The decision to leave the European Union marked a major shift in Britain's foreign policy. Brexit created new trade and diplomatic relationships, while sparking debates about sovereignty, economy, and identity. Global issues like climate change, terrorism, and pandemics require international cooperation. Britain has contributed to peacekeeping missions, humanitarian aid, and scientific collaboration worldwide. Economic globalization presents both opportunities and challenges, as Britain balances protecting its industries with engaging in international markets. Britain's cultural diplomacy, through education, arts, and language, continues to influence worldwide perceptions. The English language remains a global lingua franca, spreading British cultural values. As Britain confronts a rapidly changing world, its history of adaptation and resilience informs its ongoing efforts to define its place and purpose on the international stage. Britain's legacy of scientific discovery and technological innovation continues strongly into the 21st century. Building on centuries of breakthroughs, modern Britain remains at the forefront of research in various fields. Institutions such as the University of Cambridge, Oxford, and Imperial College London led groundbreaking work in medicine, physics, engineering, and environmental science. British scientists have been instrumental in developments ranging from genetics and cancer research to quantum computing and renewable energy technologies. Technology hubs, such as London's Silicon Roundabout, foster startups and global tech companies, driving innovation in artificial intelligence, fintech, and digital communications. The government and private sector invest heavily in research and development, recognizing science as key to economic growth and solving global challenges. Britain also plays a significant role in international scientific collaboration, participating in projects like the Large Hadron Collider and space exploration missions. These advancements shape everyday life, from healthcare improvements to sustainable energy solutions, maintaining Britain's position as a nation of innovation. Britain's social fabric has undergone profound shifts, especially over the last 2 centuries. From a rigid class-based system in the Victorian era, society has evolved toward greater mobility, diversity, and complexity. In the 19th century, social classes were sharply divided. The aristocracy and landed gentry held political and economic power, while the working classes faced difficult living and working conditions. The rise of industrial cities created new social dynamics, with a growing middle class of professionals, merchants, and skilled workers. Political reforms expanded voting rights, giving more people a voice in governance. Education and social welfare gradually improved, though inequalities remained pronounced. The 2 world wars dramatically altered social roles and expectations. Women entered the workforce in large numbers during these periods, contributing to shifts in gender roles and the eventual push for gender equality. The post-war welfare state further sought to reduce poverty and improve living standards. Immigration in the mid and late 20th century introduced new cultural influences and challenged traditional notions of British identity. Multiculturalism became a defining feature of urban centers, enriching culture but also prompting debates about integration and social cohesion. Today, Britain's society is characterized by diversity in ethnicity, religion, and lifestyle. While progress has been made toward equality, challenges persist. Economic disparities, access to quality education and healthcare, and social mobility remain critical issues. The digital age reshapes social interactions, with social media influencing politics, culture, and community. Mental health awareness has increased, reflecting broader recognition of well-being as part of social health. Britain's ongoing social evolution reflects a balance between preserving traditions and embracing change, a dynamic that continues to shape the nation's identity and future. The political system of Great Britain is a unique blend of tradition and adaptation, evolving over centuries to meet the changing needs of society. At its core lies the constitutional monarchy, where the monarch's powers are largely ceremonial, balanced by a democratic parliamentary system. Parliament, comprising the House of Commons and the House of Lords, has been central to British governance. The Commons, elected by the people, holds the primary legislative power. The Lords, historically made up of hereditary peers and bishops, has gradually transformed into a largely appointed chamber with revisory functions. The principle of parliamentary sovereignty establishes that Parliament is the supreme legal authority, able to create or end any law. This principle evolved through historic events like the Magna Carta, the English Civil War, and the Glorious Revolution, which limited monarchical power and increased parliamentary control. Political parties have played a crucial role in shaping British politics. The 2 dominant parties, the Conservatives and Labour, have alternated in power since the early 20th century. The Conservatives traditionally represent centre-right policies, emphasizing free markets and national security. Labour emerged from the trade union movement, advocating workers' rights and social welfare. In recent decades, new parties like the Liberal Democrats, Scottish National Party, SNP, and others have influenced the political landscape, reflecting regional and ideological diversity. Devolution granted Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland their own parliaments or assemblies, decentralizing power and addressing regional aspirations. The monarchy's role has become symbolic, embodying national unity and continuity. Monarchs engage in ceremonial duties, while real political power rests with elected officials, particularly the Prime Minister and Cabinet. Modern British politics grapples with challenges such as balancing national sovereignty with international cooperation, managing economic inequality, and addressing social issues like immigration and healthcare. Democratic participation has expanded, with ongoing debates about electoral reform, voting rights, and political engagement. The system's flexibility and history of peaceful transition of power contribute to Britain's reputation as a stable democracy. This political framework continues to evolve, reflecting Britain's complex history and its aspirations for the future. Culture and sport have long been pillars of British society, shaping national identity and connecting communities across generations. The arts, music, literature, and athletic pursuits reflect Britain's history, diversity, and values. British literature boasts a rich heritage, from Geoffrey Chaucer and William Shakespeare to modern authors like J.K. Rowling. Their stories, poems, and plays explore the human experience, influencing global culture and education. The theatre scene, centered in London's West End, remains vibrant and world-renowned. Music has been a powerful cultural force. Britain has produced iconic bands and artists across genres: the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, David Bowie, Adele, whose influence extends worldwide. Music festivals, from Glastonbury to classical concerts, celebrate creativity and community. Visual arts and museums preserve Britain's artistic legacy and foster contemporary expression. Institutions like the British Museum, Tate Modern, and the National Gallery attract millions, offering access to history and innovation. Sport is deeply woven into British life. Football, soccer, cricket, rugby, and tennis are more than games; they are traditions that unite diverse populations. Events like the Wimbledon Championships and the Premier League enjoy global attention. Sport promotes values of teamwork, competition, and fair play. The 2012 London Olympics showcased Britain's ability to host major international events, leaving a lasting impact on infrastructure and national pride. Community sports and grassroots initiatives encourage participation across ages and backgrounds, supporting health and social cohesion. Culture and sport together create a dynamic tapestry that celebrates Britain's past, engages the present, and inspires future generations. The 21st century has seen Britain navigate a complex economic landscape, shaped by globalization, technological innovation, and shifting political tides. The economy transitioned further from traditional industries towards services, finance, and technology. Following the early 2000s growth, the 2008 global financial crisis severely impacted Britain's economy. Banks required bailouts, unemployment rose, and government debt increased. The crisis prompted austerity measures aimed at reducing public spending, sparking debate over economic priorities and social impact. Technological advances accelerated change. The rise of the digital economy transformed commerce, communication, and work. E-commerce, fintech, and creative industries flourished, especially in cities like London, Manchester, and Edinburgh. Brexit added economic uncertainty. Leaving the European Union required renegotiating trade agreements and regulatory frameworks. Businesses faced challenges adapting to new rules, while the government sought to promote trade beyond Europe. The COVID-19 pandemic further disrupted the economy. Lockdowns affected sectors like hospitality, travel, and retail, while remote work and digital services expanded. The government introduced stimulus packages, wage support, and investment in health and infrastructure to support recovery. Sustainability became a key focus. Britain committed to reducing carbon emissions, investing in renewable energy, and developing green technologies. Economic policy increasingly incorporates environmental goals. Despite challenges, Britain remains a major global economy, balancing tradition and innovation, local and international interests, and economic growth with social responsibility. In the 21st century, Britain has continued to build upon its rich heritage of scientific discovery and technological innovation, becoming a global hub for research, development, and cutting-edge technology. The nation's universities, research institutes, and technology companies contribute significantly to advances in medicine, engineering, and environmental science. Institutions like the University of Cambridge, Oxford, and Imperial College London remain at the forefront of scientific research, making breakthroughs in fields such as genetics, artificial intelligence, and renewable energy. British scientists have played pivotal roles in global projects like the Human Genome Project and climate change research. The technology sector thrives, particularly in areas such as fintech, biotechnology, and digital media. London's tech city has become a major center for startups and innovation, attracting talent from around the world. Investments in artificial intelligence, robotics, and quantum computing position Britain as a leader in emerging technologies. Healthcare has benefited from scientific progress, with advances in personalized medicine, cancer treatments, and vaccine development. The UK's response to the COVID-19 pandemic highlighted its strengths in medical research and public health. Environmental science and sustainability are priorities, with Britain actively engaging in international efforts to combat climate change. Renewable energy technologies like offshore wind farms are expanding, contributing to the country's goal of reducing carbon emissions. As Britain moves forward, science and technology continue to shape its economy, society, and global influence, reflecting a commitment to innovation and progress. The social landscape of modern Britain reflects ongoing transformation driven by evolving values, demographics, and political activism. Throughout the late 20th and early 21st centuries, movements advocating for civil rights, equality, and social justice have reshaped society. The fight for gender equality has achieved significant milestones, including expanded legal protections and greater representation of women in politics, business, and education. Movements like #MeToo raised awareness of sexual harassment and discrimination. LGBTQ+ rights have progressed markedly, with Britain legalizing same-sex marriage in 2014 and promoting inclusion through policies and public campaigns. Pride events celebrate diversity and visibility. Racial equality remains a central focus. Britain's diverse population has spurred discussions on systemic racism, representation, and cultural recognition. Movements inspired by Black Lives Matter have prompted national conversations and policy reviews. Mental health awareness has increased, reducing stigma and encouraging access to support services. Public health initiatives emphasize well-being as a core component of social progress. Youth activism, environmentalism, and digital mobilization have empowered new generations to engage in politics and community issues. Campaigns on climate change, social justice, and economic fairness illustrate this energy. Challenges persist, including economic inequality, housing affordability, and social cohesion. However, Britain's social movements demonstrate a commitment to building a more inclusive, equitable society. Modern Britain's culture and arts scene is vibrant, diverse, and continually evolving. Rooted in centuries of tradition yet open to new influences, it reflects the country's complex identity and global connections. The British literary tradition thrives, with authors exploring varied themes from historical fiction to contemporary social issues. Institutions such as the British Library and literary festivals celebrate this heritage and promote new voices. In theatre, London's West End remains a global cultural hub, showcasing classic plays alongside innovative productions. Fringe theatres provide platforms for experimental and emerging artists, enriching the cultural landscape. Music in Britain spans genres, blending traditional and modern styles. From classical orchestras to chart-topping pop stars, British music influences global trends. Festivals like Reading and Latitude foster community and creativity. Visual arts, design, and film continue to flourish. Museums and galleries balance preservation with engagement, incorporating technology to create immersive experiences. British cinema gains international acclaim, producing works that challenge and inspire. Digital media and the internet have transformed access to and creation of art. Online platforms enable wider participation, while debates around cultural appropriation, representation, and funding shape public discourse. British culture today is a dynamic interplay of heritage and innovation, reflecting a society that values creativity, diversity, and expression. As Great Britain moves further into the 21st century, its future is shaped by a blend of opportunity, uncertainty, and enduring strengths. The nation faces complex challenges that will test its resilience and adaptability. Economically, Britain must balance innovation with inclusivity. Embracing emerging technologies and green industries offers pathways to sustainable growth, while addressing inequality and regional disparities remains vital for social cohesion. Politically, debates over national identity and governance persist. Questions surrounding the unity of the United Kingdom, relations with Europe, and global alliances shape policy and public opinion. The rise of regional nationalism and calls for autonomy highlight the evolving nature of the Union. Socially, Britain continues to grapple with diversity and inclusion. Integrating multiple cultures and identities into a shared society requires ongoing dialogue and effort. Education, healthcare, and social welfare systems will need to evolve to meet changing needs. Environmental concerns dominate agendas worldwide. Britain's commitment to carbon neutrality and sustainable practices reflects a growing awareness of its role in global stewardship. Technological advancements will redefine work, communication, and daily life, offering both promise and challenges. The country's ability to harness these changes while safeguarding privacy, security, and equity will be crucial. Ultimately, Great Britain's future will be shaped by its people, their values, choices, and vision. Drawing on a rich history of innovation and resilience, the nation stands poised to navigate an uncertain yet hopeful path forward. The history of Great Britain is a vast and intricate tapestry, woven from centuries of triumphs and trials, innovation and tradition, unity and division. From ancient tribal lands through empire and industrial might to a modern multicultural democracy, Britain's journey reflects both the uniqueness of its people and their shared humanity. Its legacy is visible worldwide, in language, law, literature, political ideals, and cultural contributions that have shaped civilizations. The complexities of empire reveal lessons on power and responsibility, while the nation's democratic evolution offers models of governance and civil rights. Great Britain continues to balance respect for its rich heritage with the demands of a changing world. Its identity is dynamic, embracing diversity and innovation while honoring tradition. As this story ends, the nation's future remains unwritten, shaped by the hopes and actions of generations to come. The enduring spirit of Great Britain lies not only in its past but in its ongoing story, a testament to resilience, creativity, and the human capacity for growth. Education has been a cornerstone in the development and progress of Great Britain. From the establishment of medieval universities such as Oxford and Cambridge to the widespread expansion of public schooling, education has continuously adapted to meet societal needs. During the Industrial Revolution, education became crucial for training workers and fostering innovation. The 19th and 20th centuries saw reforms introducing compulsory education and expanding access, helping reduce illiteracy and opening opportunities across social classes. In modern Britain, education aims to balance tradition and modernity. Prestigious universities attract international students and contribute to cutting-edge research. Meanwhile, schools focus on inclusivity, digital literacy, and preparing students for a globalized world. Lifelong learning and vocational training have gained importance as the economy shifts and technology evolves. Challenges remain in ensuring equal access and addressing disparities. Education not only imparts knowledge but also shapes values and identity, playing a vital role in Britain's social cohesion and future development. Throughout the 20th century, Great Britain played a pivotal role in shaping world events. Emerging from the ruins of two world wars, the nation found itself at a crossroads, balancing its imperial legacy with the realities of a new global order. During World War I, Britain stood as part of the Allied powers, enduring immense sacrifice and mobilizing its vast empire. The conflict marked profound social change and the beginning of the empire's decline. World War II further solidified Britain's place on the world stage. Under the leadership of Winston Churchill, Britain resisted the Axis powers, becoming a symbol of resilience and determination. The war's aftermath accelerated decolonization and reshaped international relations. Britain was a founding member of the United Nations, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, and played a key role in establishing the European Economic Community, precursor to the European Union. These institutions reflected Britain's commitment to international cooperation and collective security. The Cold War era saw Britain aligned with Western powers, contributing to diplomatic, military, and intelligence efforts. The nation's nuclear program and intelligence agencies such as MI6 played important roles in global strategy. In recent decades, Britain has navigated complex challenges, including its relationship with the EU, involvement in international conflicts, and responses to global crises like climate change and pandemics. Britain's influence today continues through diplomacy, cultural exchange, and participation in multinational organizations. Its historical experiences provide valuable lessons for addressing contemporary global issues. Great Britain's contributions to science and technology have long had global impact. In the 20th and 21st centuries, British researchers and innovators have been at the forefront of breakthroughs that shaped modern life worldwide. The nation's universities and research centers foster collaboration across borders. British scientists participated in monumental projects such as the Human Genome Project, which revolutionized genetics and medicine globally. Advances in physics, from the work of Stephen Hawking to quantum computing, demonstrate Britain's continuing leadership in fundamental research. Technology hubs in cities like London and Cambridge attract international talent and investment, driving innovation in artificial intelligence, biotechnology, and clean energy. British firms contribute significantly to global industries, from pharmaceuticals to telecommunications. Space exploration also features prominently, with British engineers and scientists participating in missions and satellite development. The UK's space agency coordinates efforts to expand Britain's presence beyond Earth. Environmental science and sustainability are key priorities. Britain plays an active role in global climate initiatives, developing renewable energy technologies and promoting sustainable policies. By combining tradition with forward-thinking research, Britain maintains its position as a vital contributor to scientific progress and technological development on the world stage. Modern Britain is a tapestry woven from centuries of migration, cultural exchange, and social evolution. The nation's population reflects a wide range of ethnicities, religions, and traditions, creating a rich and complex social fabric. Post-World War II immigration brought waves of people from the Caribbean, South Asia, Africa, and Eastern Europe. These communities have contributed to British culture, economy, and society in countless ways, from cuisine and music to business and academia. Cultural diversity has enriched the arts, education, and public life, while also presenting challenges in social cohesion and identity. Efforts to promote inclusion, combat discrimination, and foster understanding are ongoing priorities. Multicultural cities like London, Birmingham, and Manchester serve as vibrant centers of diversity. Festivals, religious observances, and community events celebrate different heritages, highlighting Britain's pluralism. At the same time, social dynamics reflect broader issues such as economic inequality, housing affordability, and political representation. Debates about immigration, integration, and national identity remain central to public discourse. Youth culture, influenced by digital media and global trends, blends traditional British elements with international influences, shaping new expressions of identity. Britain's ongoing journey toward embracing diversity while maintaining social harmony exemplifies its evolving character in a globalized world. As we reach the end of this extensive journey through Great Britain's history, it becomes clear that the nation's story is one of continuous transformation. From ancient beginnings to a modern, diverse society, Britain has navigated conquest, empire, industrial change, and social evolution. The legacies of kings and queens, thinkers and inventors, artists and activists intertwine to form a rich cultural tapestry. Britain's influence on language, law, politics, science, and the arts resonates worldwide, reflecting a complex blend of achievements and challenges. Looking forward, Britain faces questions about its identity, unity, and role on the global stage. Economic change, technological innovation, and social diversity present both opportunities and obstacles. The strength of Great Britain lies in its people, their resilience, creativity, and capacity for adaptation. History shows that while change is constant, the nation's core values endure. This story is not just about what was, but about what will be, a living narrative shaped by each generation's hopes and actions. As night falls and this tale concludes, the future of Great Britain awaits, open to possibility and promise.